Hello everyone and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, where we watch every single theatrically released film in order. I'm Sean.
And I'm Tania.
And this week we are looking at Disney's...
Yes?
I wanted to say Beauty and the Beast, but that's not right. Beauty and the Beast, Lady and the Tramp.
There's you can see. And the...
Yeah, you can see. But yeah, we're looking at Disney's Lady and the Tramp.
Yes. I love this movie.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's just nice.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy it. It's got dogs, so of course it was something I loved as a kid. And now as an adult, it's just this movie's so weird.
It's very strange. The subject matter is, not a children's story at all.
No, the only thing really appealing here to children is the fact that it's got dogs and a couple of comedy scenes.
Is there? I'm trying to remember.
There's the beaver.
Oh, yeah.
And Jock and Trusty are kind of like a comedy duo, sort of.
Wow, yeah, but no, the rest of it's pretty well aimed at adults.
Yeah, or at least just a general older audience that also includes kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, I don't feel like anyone ever says this, but this is a weird movie, right?
I think so.
Nobody ever says it, but this movie's just weird. Why did they make this? It's just not an obvious choice for Disney.
No.
And given the subject matter of it, and just how I don't know, it takes place turn of the century, so it's already 50s nostalgia for the past.
But then it's a story about classism.
Yeah.
And a one-night stand.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some sprinklings of race stuff in there.
Well, that's kind of unintentional. They're just kind of making a few race jokes that haven't aged all that well.
No, definitely not.
No.
But, definitely class, the class thing and the
one-night stand thing are definitely intentional.
That's the entire plot of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those films that's aged beautifully and aged poorly at the same time.
It's very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's got elements of both.
So, to give you a brief summary of the plot of this film.
Yes.
There is a...
Can I do this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I normally do it, but go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a Cocker Spaniel named Lady who lives in a rich, let's say upper middle class. She's an upper middle class dog.
Mm-hmm.
And her life kind of gets turned upside down. She's living the perfect little life. Nice white picket fences. But her life kind of gets turned around when her owners have a baby.
Yes.
And because they have a baby, she feels like she's not the center of their attention anymore. And then the movie doesn't go the way you think it would with that kind of plot.
No.
It instead becomes a movie about how she kind of finds her own meaning and her own self through these adventures with Tramp. Because Tramp comes in and he's like, oh, well, a baby's gonna ruin your life.
Just wait, you're gonna be on the streets like me.
Yeah. But anyway, the owners leave for a little while. And Lady actually is really fond of the baby. Mm-hmm. There isn't a jealous younger sibling, older sibling thing going on. No, she actually becomes really protective of the baby. But the owners have to leave because they're going on vacation. And Aunt Sarah comes in, and then there's this big miscommunication because Aunt Sarah's kind of a busybody and doesn't like dogs.
Yeah, she's kind of an idiot that doesn't like dogs because she's an evil cat lady.
You're right. And
Whoopee.
And so Lady ends up getting kind of lost in the streets, and so she meets Tramp, and then her and Tramp have a really romantic evening.
Where they go to Makeout Point.
Well, but first they go to a romantic Italian restaurant in a back alleyway.
But then they definitely go
to Makeout Point.
They go to Makeout Point to do some macking in their struggle buggy. Wait, that's...
I like how you can see, like, other cars and couples there.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely other cars and couples there, and you know exactly what's going on.
They wake up the next morning, and Lady's like, I gotta go home.
This was a mistake.
Yeah, and Tramp's like, oh, but think of all the things we could do together. No owners.
It'd be
just
great.
us out on the open road. And she's like, nah, I gotta get back to the baby.
Well, she gets captured by the Pound.
Because Tramp's an idiot.
Yeah, Tramp's an idiot and wants to chase chickens.
Yeah. She gets captured by the Pound, and in the Pound, Lady finds out about all the other girls the Tramp has been with.
Uh-huh.
Along with just seeing some blatant. So, no, I was gonna say, like, stuff that just kind of, like, breaks your heart. The whole Pound scene is, like, very odd tonally, because it's, like, on one hand, it starts off, and it's, like, more sad than the Sarah McLachlan commercials. And then, on the other hand, it then quickly turns into, like, a comedy between all these Pound dogs. And then it gets super serious again as they, like, take a dog off to go get euthanized.
And then they're talking to Lady.
And then it turns into, like, a showgirl scene as Peg sings her song.
It's like, this dog's supposed to be sexy right now. Not even just like... No, you're supposed to feel feelings for this dog with the motions it's making. And
beautifully animated, by the way.
Beautifully animated, but it's
by
just like...
Eric Larson, I should
people
say.
are always, like, looking at, like, the anthropomorphic movies to, like, oh, this is making kids into furries. And I was like, guys, Disney's been doing this since day one.
Look at Lady in the Tramp. Look at Peg. Look at this dog.
This is just a dog. This isn't even like an anthropomorphic dog. It's just a dog, and it's supposed to be sexy.
Oh yeah, she's like an old showgirl dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, Lady finds out about all of Tramp's other girls.
Mm-hmm.
Gets taken back home because she has a license. License is a big part of the film too.
You know, she's...
It's like
legal.
a symbol of her class.
Yeah.
That she has this license.
All the class stuff. Ooh.
Yeah. So she doesn't get to stay in the Pound, unlike all the other dogs.
Needless to say, she's a little traumatized by the whole event.
Yeah. But Tramp comes back. Well, okay, and then we have that scene where after Lady's been to the Pound, where Jock and Trusty are like proposing to her.
Because, like, she's been traumatized, so she needs a man.
Right.
And it's just like, whoa, hold on.
It's such a weird scene. Like, it really doesn't make sense in today's context at all. It's one of those things as a kid I never understood.
No, it's like, okay.
What the purpose of that scene was.
That must have been, like, the thing to do back in the day, but this is just...
it's really dark.
It's really dark and a definite no-go in today's society.
Yeah, it's just... it just freaks me out.
Oh, let's take this person that has just been traumatized by, like...
Going to jail,
like, by events that she never expected to be in. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I understand you're traumatized, so to deal with this, we're going to marry you off so you don't have to deal with anything ever again.
Yeah.
Whoa, guys, no. Hold on. This is not the right thing to do in this situation.
Right. Luckily, the scene is cut short as Tramp comes back in.
And she gets angry at him and tells him to piss off.
Mm-hmm.
But immediately has to change that because a rat...
Yet again, though, just, like, great character... Like, I know I keep stopping the summary, but there's so much great character animation in this film. The personalities in this movie is what always has kind of done it for me. I think the characterization in this movie is so good. Like, all the characters are likable. and the animation's just so good.
Oh, it's genuinely charming. I honestly gotta say, whenever Disney, specifically Disney, does the animals, like does animal animation compared to humans, I love the level of realism they can get out of it.
Right,
Because more often than not, when you do a human in animation, it's either going to be like, up to this point, it's generally like overly cartoonish characters, or you get a
rotoscope,
like a rotoscope character.
which can be great. Like Lady Tremaine. Lady Tremaine's great. Cinderella is great. We got some great stuff with Peter Pan and Hook, but
Just all the other random background characters in those movies, they're just cartoons.
yeah,
Like all the pirates and stuff.
right.
So it's like whenever they do the animals, I don't know why, but they just always hit it perfectly, the level of realism they need to get,
Well,
and the
yeah,
amount of
because-
cartoonishness.
Because they're finally they aren't forced to use the video footage, I feel. They aren't forced to use the live action reference. And live action reference is great, but I think
It's
it went
stepping
a little
off point.
I think it went a little too far for some of the human animation sequences. And I think when they have the animals, they do a lot of studying of the animals beforehand. And then when they go into animation, then they're mostly relying on the voice actors' performances, their own knowledge of the animals after a long time of studying, and then they're going off of just their own acting ability. And, like they had mirrors set up in their offices, and they would just act. And to be a great animator, you have to also be an actor. And this makes those Disney animators really, really shine, because they are brilliant actors.
Oh, yeah.
And movies like this just prove it.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. Like, there's some brilliant reactions, specifically between Lady and Tramp. I like that there's finally a Disney romance here that actually has some chemistry building up. You have two characters acting and reacting to each other in believable ways. It's just so good. But anyway,
To finish things off.
to finish off the summary, Lady banishes Tramp, tells him she doesn't want to see him again. But then a rat climbs up into the baby's room, and Lady is chained up outside. Tramp hears her barking, comes to the house, goes to
Save the baby.
save the baby by killing the rat. Aunt Sarah finds Tramp and calls the dog pound.
And he's being taken off, and he's, like, they say straight up that he's gonna get, like, they're gonna kill that dog as soon as he gets to the pound, because he's been so much trouble for a very long time.
Yeah. And then it all wraps up. Like the
Then there's, like, they
owners
have to
come
chase
home
down-
and they chase down the dog pound, and Trusty has his moment. Like Trusty and Jock have their moments to shine and all that. And then Tramp ends up being domesticated.
Again.
Yeah, and he lives with Lady and they have puppies and blah, 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 blah. Happy ending.
Yeah.
Yet again, though, I want to point out, like, another brilliant sequence of animation is that fight scene with the rat.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that is intense stuff.
It's like, it's a dog fighting a rat. That's all it is. But the way it's shot, and just, like, the way that they're, like, running around and, like, lashing out at each other, it's so well done.
That sequence was animated by Wooly Reitherman, and it is, I think, some of the last bits of animation he did for Walt Disney.
Wow.
After this, he's mostly going to become a director.
Okay.
So he's not leaving the studio. But on that note, quite a few of the traditional 9 old men are not appearing in this film.
Huh, that's very interesting.
There's a lot of animation from Milt Kahl in this movie. He worked on a lot of the characters in this film. If he didn't animate them, he most likely had something to do with their character designs, except for maybe like some of the human characters.
Yeah.
Even the cat Cyanam,
which we didn't mention because
well, there is stuff to mention about them, and we'll
talk to them in a bit.
But like he did the kind of final designs for them. So Milt Kahl was obviously part of this movie. He and Frank Thomas teamed up and did the animation on Tramp, which I think is great because Frank Thomas is a brilliant actor and Milt Kahl is a brilliant draftsman, and so like them working together is a dream team.
Yeah, indeed.
You've got Ollie, of course, who worked on the movie. Yeah,
I love Milt Kahl's line work and like all of his character design and stuff like that.
I love the little touches, like little character moments that are just real and human, like when Tramp first wakes up in the train station and he stretches, yawns, and he's got like the water, like he's taking a shower and he shakes off. That's all brilliant stuff, and I know that was animated by Milt Kahl.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Milt, Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnston, Eric Larson worked on Peg, and John Lazenberry did the two Italian chefs who definitely have the best human animation in this film, if not some of the best human animation
up to this point
in Disneydom. Yeah, up to this point.
Yeah, I would agree. And they're definitely cartoon characters, but they fit better than most of the others.
This film's art direction is a lot more solid than a lot of other Disney films.
Except for the humans. Just, the weird thing about this movie is there are multiple humans in this movie, and only about half of them do you see a face, like a focus on their faces. So there's John Deere and Darling, who are ladies owners. You sometimes see their faces, but it's like generally a far out shot and you don't see a focus on their faces because I don't know why, because
it's supposed to be from the dog's perspective,
so
which
she doesn't
is
really,
a smart decision, except they break that rule.
They break that rule with other humans in this world.
Yeah.
Because sure, they keep that idea with them, and so they're fairly like rotoscoped and realistic looking. But then we have things like Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah, who is definitely a cartoon character.
Yeah.
And we focus on her face a lot.
She essentially is just a caricature of Verna Felton, who's her voice actor.
Oh.
Okay.
So like immediately the third human character we're introduced to breaks the rule that they've already set up, but then there's other humans that they do the rotoscoping no face or very little face trick with, but then we have Mario and Luigi, except it's not Mario and Luigi. What are their names?
Tony and
Joe?
Tony and Joe.
Tony and Joe.
The Italian restaurant.
Yeah, the Italian restaurant dudes, who are a good mix between the rotoscoped humans and the overly cartoony Ant. I
feel like they weren't rotoscoped. I feel like, and I could be wrong, I'm just making a guess.
Okay.
But like just looking at their animation and knowing it was John Lazenberry doing their animation, I feel like that's just him.
Okay.
In the past, the scene we praised him for last time in Peter Pan was the scene of Hook climbing up the mast.
Oh,
that shot there. And like, I believe that he just did that, man. Like,
it's very possible
without live action reference.
But either way, I think they fit best with the animals that they have. It's like the hyper realistic humans don't really do it for me with the
rotoscoping and
and like the overly cartoonish Ant doesn't do it for me either. But these two guys, they fit best for me.
Well, and they occupy like the best scene of the movie, like the most iconic scene of the movie.
Call it Bella Notte. I guess this might be a good time to transition into the fact that there is some racist stereotyping in this movie.
Oh yeah. Like I said, this film has both aged beautifully, I think, in the story department, but in like some of the cultural things, it's just like, why Disney?
The Italian restaurant guy that doesn't speak good English with Tony and Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's like, okay.
It's there.
Right,
what are you
fine.
gonna do?
There's also a random Chihuahua in the pound who is very much so a Mexican stereotype, and that's not okay.
Oh, and his sister, Chiquita Rosita.
Everything about that is not okay. It's like, whoa, guys, that's not cool. But I think the biggest offenders have been pointed out many times already is Sai and Am, the Siamese cats, who are very much so Asian stereotypes with buck teeth and everything.
You want to know what their names were in the original script?
I don't. But tell me.
Nip and Tuck.
No.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yep.
Those are derogatory terms.
Disney changed that.
Good.
An interesting thing about the production of this film, this movie was actually like 15 to 20 years in the making.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
So, Storyman, I think it's Joe Grant? Was actually writing this as a story to be turned into a feature film for Walt ever since around the time of Snow White.
Wow, okay. So it's one of those that's been on the back burner for a really long time.
Right, and he did a lot of storyboards, he did a lot of writing, and it was all kind of just about his dog, Lady. He had an English Cocker Spaniel, and he just kind of wanted to tell a story about her. But in production, Walt was just never really happy with where the story was going. He felt like it didn't have enough action to it. Lady was just too nice and too good.
So many rewrites later.
Well, Disney ended up buying the rights to a book. I forget what the book is called, but it was about like a mischievous dog.
Okay.
And they're like, what if we put this kind of character into the movie?
Just shove them two together.
Yeah, and made it a romance
now
story.
Kiss.
Yeah, now Kiss. So they started working on the Tramp character. They called him a lot of different names. Like, I know Bozo was a name that Tramp had for a really long time.
Lady and Bozo.
Lady and the Bozo.
I like it. Ship it.
No, instead they went with the much riskier name of Tramp. But Joe Grant actually ended up leaving the studio before Lady and the Tramp got finished.
Oh.
And as a result, he's not even listed in the credits as having worked on this film.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Another thing, I guess if we're going to be noting people who have left Disney Studio at this point, Mary Blair did a few concept drawings early on for this movie, or when it started to get into production, but then she ended up leaving to become a illustrator for children's books.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I think Mary Blair ends up coming back a little bit later in Disney history to do a couple more things, but for the most part, her career at Disney is done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she definitely left her fingerprints on a lot of movies.
She left a huge mark on Disney, so, you know, and I think she was a pretty successful illustrator, too, so.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah, just, gosh, I know I said this at the beginning, But yeah, this is just a weird movie, and I love it because, like, we're not gonna get a story like this ever again.
No, probably not. Especially not from American animation.
No.
It's like, maybe some of the foreign films will give stuff like this to us, but that's because other countries think about animation in a different way that America does.
Well, and another thing I like about this movie is it's sort of like Bambi. I don't think this film's as serious as Bambi.
No.
But I love that it takes its animal characters seriously.
Yeah, they're not just cartoons.
Yeah, it takes the concept of them being dogs and their dog world and their emotions and their personalities, and it takes them seriously. And you don't get that a lot with animal films today. Unless it's something like, you know, Zootopia, where it's more of an anthropomorphic thing.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, usually when there's animal characters on screen, they're more cartoony.
They're more cartoonier. They're a sidekick, or
There's a lot of puns and
stuff like that.
And I like that this film takes itself seriously.
It's like, we don't need all that stuff. We're going to tell a serious story that just happens to star animals. And it's much appreciated.
Yeah. If you haven't done this before, I highly recommend looking up drawings from this film that, like, any animation, any rough animation before they put it onto cells, or just any concept drawings, because God, the artwork in this film is gorgeous, and like some of the artwork I'm obviously going to be showing, but just some of the drawings are beautiful. Oh, and another thing to note that's interesting about the development of this film, it was filmed twice.
Oh, yeah, that is a good thing to point out about this.
So CinemaScope had just become a thing, which is essentially widescreen nowadays.
Like, really widescreen.
Yeah, except CinemaScope was like really widescreen, even more so than what we're
have
used
today.
to. Yeah. So the original plan was to film it completely in CinemaScope, but because a lot of theaters weren't switching to CinemaScope,
yep.
Yeah. Walt
still
actually
just
had
old,
them
like 4x3.
Yeah, Walt had them film it twice, so it meant that
certain things had to be redrawn.
Certain things had to be redrawn, but most of the time it meant that cells had to be placed closer together so that they weren't getting cut off on the screen. Just interesting bit of trivia.
That is interesting.
And definitely raised the cost for this film. But,
I can imagine so.
But this film actually did pretty well in the box office, even though critics weren't that thrilled with it. They thought it was kind of mediocre compared to some of Disney's past films, and I'm like, I disagree, especially considering the last few films we've watched are like Peter Pan and Alice. I'm like,
I don't know, man.
I like this one way more than those, so, yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I think that's all we've got to say about Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah, I think that's about all I got to say.
I didn't really ask you, what are your feelings on the film, or like, how did you feel about this film growing up?
Oh, that's a good question. This is another one of those Disney films that I never really watched growing up. I might have watched it once when I was pretty young, but this is another one of those that we actually had a storybook version of it. Because for some reason, my family actually had a lot of like golden books or other like storybook versions of a lot of Disney films that we didn't actually own. So a lot of these early Disney films, even if I hadn't watched them, I'd still experienced them in just a slightly different manner. So I already knew the story of like the rat and all the stuff that went on with that. But it's one that I was like, again, I've watched maybe once, but I never really felt the need to seek it out and watch it more than that.
Okay.
It's just like, oh, that's another Disney film. I enjoyed it, I guess. But I was young and I really didn't realize all the different like class intrigue and stuff.
Right. Like, I think a lot of the story kind of goes over kids' heads, especially when it comes to stuff about, like, Jim Deere and Darling having their baby. And, like,
Yeah.
like the baby shower they have and stuff like that. Like, all those jokes fly completely over kids' heads.
Oh, most definitely.
And
So-
they're not even good jokes now, so, you know.
No, it's like, so I didn't really care for much of that, and
No.
I honestly was not super into dog movies, because, I mean, I grew up with cousins that wanted to watch things like Lassie and whatever the Beagle movie is, and
Shiloh?
Shiloh, and
Yeah.
just all the dog movies all the time. So
Old Yeller?
yeah. So I don't think I ever saw it, but everything in that genre, it's like I was sick of dog movies. So even though this one was animated, I never really felt the need to watch it that much.
Well, animated dog movies are preferable to live action dog movies.
Well, yeah.
Because live action dog movies are all the same. Same 2-3 stories. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention is I love the soundtrack for this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the songs. Yet again, I love whenever the music is with the actions of the animation.
Yes, yes.
And there's so much of that here. Like the delicate little paw steps Lady has, or whenever she's like running around in the garden, or like her morning routine when she's like going out and burying a bone and getting the paper and stuff. Like all the music just fits with that scene.
It illustrates it so well.
Yeah, it's like if I was just listening to the music, I'd be able to visualize exactly what was going on in the movie at the time. And yeah, I love soundtracks like that in films.
It's good stuff.
Anyway, though, I think that wraps up this week's Animation Pilgrimage. So that means next week we've got The Enchanted Boy from the USSR.
Yes.
All right. If you guys like this episode, be sure to check out our links below and look at our Patreon. We do lots of other content also on Sean's channel. We are playing video games. We are probably finishing up Last Guardian and Kingdom Hearts at this point, so we will have some new games.
Well, I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to think
Showing
about
up
when this will come
soon.
out. But yeah, I think we're just about at the end of The Last Guardian and Kingdom Hearts 1. So if neither of those have caught your interest, we do have 2 more games already lined up and ready to come out very soon after that.
Yeah. Granted, the one is a sequel to Kingdom Hearts, because doy. But,
Yeah.
but a new game after Last Guardian.
And it's completely different from any of the stuff we've been playing so far.
Yes. So, see you guys then.
Bye.
My